In order for you to prosper when you have the funds, you have to know how to keep your records in order.
Welcome to a brand new episode of Pushing Your Peas podcast. Today I am excited to welcome Vanessa Hall, a seasoned professional with over a decade of experience in banking, now the executive assistant at TCI Finance Limited and secretary of the TCI National Wealth Fund. Vanessa brings her expertise in business and finance, but it's her passion for the Turks and Caicos Islands and her purpose-driven outlook that truly shines. On this episode, Vanessa shares her insights on prosperity and the adjustments and mindsets we need to embrace in order to live a prosperous and joyous life. She also dives into the P promise and how her personal commitment to enriching the lives of Turks and Caicos Islanders has become a guiding force in her journey. Sit back, relax, and let's get ready to push some peas. I just want to thank you for being a guest on Pushing Your Peas podcast. We are excited to have you here. When I say we, I mean me and my audience. We are looking forward to this episode because we all want to know how to prosper in life. And you work for an organization called TCI Finance. And so I want to dive into the concept of prosperity with you being the executive assistant to the CEO of that organization. And so a first question to you would be is, when you hear the word prosperity, what comes to your mind?
I actually thought about this all day when I thought about prosperity, and to me, I say that word is definitely not a singular word. When you think about prosperity, a lot of people would think about the Jeremiah 29 verse 11, all that we do will prosper. But there's so much more to it, because in prosperity, you cannot work alone. I cannot sit here and say, I'm going to prosper in this interview, because I can't do this interview without you. So when I look at prosperity, I look at all the different little things that will come together to make it work. So let's take it back to sowing seeds. I thought about this parable today as well. The parable of the seeds, where it speaks about the seed that fell into the rocky soil, the seed that fell into the good soil, and the seed that only fell into the surface. Now, in plain sight, you see it as just seeds falling. But when you look deep into it, the seeds that fell into the good soil were in the right condition to grow and thrive. So when I see prosperity, I look at everything around me. What is adding to me that can help me to prosper in the future? It's not something that I'm looking at for the next 5 minutes. Prosperity is a future thinking term. You have to be in position, and you have to have all the pieces you need in order to become whole. So that's how I think about prosperity. Like, I thought about this all day because I felt like prosperity could not be looked at singularly at all. You do need it, whether it's with, family, whether if it's with friends. Everything that is added to you will make you either prosper or you won't. So you really have to be alert and pay attention to every single piece that you're letting be added to you, or you're adding to.
Our concept of prosperity is often associated with wealth. In the Bible, when we hear the Jeremiah 29:11 quote, the first thing comes to your mind is, God is going to make me richest. hearing how you describe prosperity, it seems to be a holistic view where you is multiple things that contributes to a prosperous life. So is it wrong for me to view prosperity as wealth, or is wealth just one component of prosperity?
Wealth is actually one component of prosperity because even when I look at it in the holistic view, I still look at all the things that added in order for me to get there. Like you can't get money without first getting a job, without second learning to save or money management. And then in the future, the money will definitely pile up and you can go and do something else, maybe start a business, maybe invest. But first, you have to look at the starting point. What is your starting point? Because we don't just wake up in wealth, but we have to work towards wealth. So in prosperity, I see it as putting in work now for the future.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, you work for a company called TCI Finance. Can you tell me what is TCI Finance and what are its goals and objectives for the Turks and Caicos Islands?
Right. TCI Finance is a nonprofit, public and private government entity that has been created to promote the financial services sector because we're looking to create a new industry. Just as we have tourism, because of COVID, there is a need to strengthen another industry. And during COVID, you saw that the banks were open, the law firms were open, corporate services were open, these were still going. And so in their study, they came out with a recommendation to grow the financial industries of the Turks and Caicos. And lo and behold, TCI Finance was created. And so our main objectives, I can tell you, is to promote, to educate, and to protect and support the financial services sector. Because we're looking to make TCI an international financial center, but also we're looking to domestically educate our people and uplift them to create more careers, and create ways to retain talent because we have a lot of talented professionals here.
V, I have to ask this question for my audience, and I would
Sure.
not be a good host if I didn't ask this question, given that your goal is to strengthen financial institutions in this country. And this question is centered around banking. It is so frustrating to do banking in
Oh,
this country right now. And I don't want to put you on the hot spot, but I'm just speaking from the average citizen. It seems as though banking in this
yes.
country is going backwards and not forwards. And so you go to these establishments. There's long lines. Sometimes you standing out in the sun. They ain't even want to bring you a bottle of water, even though you standing outside giving them business. You know what I mean? Now I just being a little funny, but at the same time, it's kind of frustrating because you go to the bank and your idea is that okay, fast and efficient service. I remember in the mid 2000s, banking was beautiful. I never had to wait a long time to use the banks and all this other. Now it's like you gotta allocate 20 to 30 minutes when you go to some of these banks. So tell me, how is TCI Finance advising these banks or even helping to solve this issue? Because from what we're seeing as the average citizen, banking is regressing in this country.
That's a really good question. And yes, you did put me in the hot seat, but with banking and the TCI to be exact, because it has been going into that digitizing phase, it has become difficult for us as people who are so used to walking in the bank, going to the teller, being in and out to adjust because now we are now trusting machines. And with change comes the challenges. It comes to challenges. That's not something we can control, but it's something that we have to adjust to, something that we have to learn. Because me personally, I've been in banking for 10 years. And after banking, I came into TCI Finance. But I can tell you this, I have not been to the bank 10 times for the past 12 months because I use the ATM, I use my card, I'm using everything that they have presented to me to help make my life easier because with change come challenges. And I am one who, like most people, if I see a long line, I'm turning around. I'm turning around and I'm going to try again. I'll be persistent and ensuring that I don't go inside. But what TCI Finance has been doing with the banks, it has been a learning curve because not only are we now paying attention to what the country needs, we are also listening to how we can assist the banks. And we have three private banks, three private commercial banks, which are Canadian owned. And then we have one TCI bank, one local bank, not TCI bank, one local bank, and two offshore banks. So the offshore banks, they're good. You know, they don't have the retail clients, but most of the issue is lying with the commercial banks because, you know, everybody goes there, everybody uses that. And what TCI Finance has been looking at is how we can phase into the digital world a little more. And working with the Bankers Association, I know they have been looking at ways to make banking a little more convenient. But what's
A lot more.
convenient with the banks? Yes. What's convenient with the banks may not be convenient for the clients. Because again, we live in a country where we are loving what we're used to. And we're going to always hate something new. Always going to hate
Of
something new.
of course, change is never something that's accepted, right? And I get that, Vanessa, but
No.
sometimes we would like to see improvements. I don't want to touch on the subject too much because it's kind of sensitive to me, but I do
It's
hope
so sensitive.
that the banks improved, and I hope you guys continue to work closely with them to improve their services. Because currently, as the citizens of the Turks and Caicos Islands, we are highly frustrated with all the banks. There's no bank that's spared in this discussion at the moment. All right, so moving on, Vanessa, I would like you to, because you've worked in the banking institution, so you've probably seen and heard of a lot of stories in the area of prosperity and in the financial component of prosperity. What are some common mistakes we make as Turks and Caicos Islanders with our finances that stop us from advancing in our professional and personal lives?
That question is something I have observed my whole life from as a child. Um, for us TCI Islanders, I would say the mismanagement. the mismanagement when it comes to finances. Because a lot of people, you know, if they get a lump sum, if they get a lottery, you're going to blow it because you have the lump sum and you're going to be like, I wanted this, I wanted that, I wanted this. So I'm going to get it because I have the money. Whereas, in order for you to prosper when you have the funds, you have to know how to keep your records in order. You have to know how to prioritize and manage your funds for the future. It's like sowing a seed. You have to sow a seed. You have to put it aside or invest it for the future, because I'm going to be big on investments, because being in the banking sector, that's one thing I looked at outside of my job. How can I invest my funds for the future? Where can I invest my funds for the future? Yes, you would like to have the biggest tech, the best vehicles, the flyest shoes, designer brands, but you have to make some sacrifices in order to prosper. You cannot prosper off of, I would say, splurging. You cannot prosper off of splurging. You cannot prosper off of emotions. Prosperity requires a collection of behaviors and skills that you need in order to get more out of your funds, get more out of your money. And I can take it as far back as, let's say you're a child. Your auntie comes or your uncle comes and they give you $20. As a child, you don't know the value of the $20, but your parents may. And so they're like, I'm going to hold this for you for later. But you want it because you want to go to the next shop and buy your candy. So you see, that moment of wanting to splurge causes you to devalue the funds, because you don't know. You don't know how much it values, but you know it can get you something you want. And until you really learn how to manage money, and it's not just based on saving, because managing money comes with knowing the value of it, knowing ways in order to get more out of it before you spend it.
Vanessa, I'm gonna ask one more question because we are approaching the halfway point of the episode. But you talk about financial literacy, and we have um, organizations here that give out money for grants and for loans and all these other things. And I think what you don't see is the financial literacy or education coming behind these things that they're doing. And I'm wondering if this is purposely done to keep these persons in debt so that they'll keep paying that interest. That's just my conspiracy theory as it relates to debt. However, as an institution like Finance TCI or TCI Finance, sorry, uh, is there an objective for you guys to provide some sort of a media awareness of financial literacy or program that talks about the very things you spoke about earlier?
Yes, and I will touch point on the first part of your question. Are you speaking on loan sharks, or are you speaking on Invest TCI?
Both of them.
Invest TCI has a business support unit that actually educates people on how to manage their books and read financial statements. So they noticed the need for that, and they developed a department that supports you all the way through with your business, from grant to, I guess, the first 2 years, just to make sure the continuity is happening. As for loan sharks, they're always going to look for vulnerabilities. And when you don't know money, you're vulnerable to debt because you only want it for what you want now. So with
Indeed.
TCI Finance, we have been collaborating. We have been collaborating with the Bankers Association because they started a financial literacy week about 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago. Yeah, 2 to 3 years ago, post-COVID. And they have been going to the high schools and having different seminars to talk to the next generation about financial literacy. And I think that's very important for our up and coming generation because they need to be in a position to thrive. And in order for them to be in a position, it's going to be people like us who know better to start
Yes.
teaching them, to start planting the seed of what they need to know, how they need to behave, and know exactly what is out there before they start to get some money. Because we also want to encourage more entrepreneurship in TCI. But we can't have entrepreneurs if they can't manage money.
Yes.
No, we can't put them in a position to fail. And in being in TCI Finance, I take that as a personal objective that I am in a position where I am going to receive more knowledge, and I refuse to allow anybody who's coming behind me, my nieces, my nephews, my daughter, any young person that I come across, I refuse to allow them to come up in TCI as TCI is growing and developing, not knowing how to manage fund, how to be in the position of prosperity because I want to keep it to myself.
Mm.
I'm personally not going to be that type of person because in looking at prosperity, there is collaboration, there is sharing of knowledge, there is growth. Circle back to what I started with. You need the different components in order to thrive. You need to water the seed, you need the sand, you need the soil, you need the sun. For some, you need
Yes.
shade. If I'm going to be a rock for the next generation, I would I would be more angry at myself when I get older than I was when I took my $10 and go buy a bunch of stuff by Cannon Store in Blue Hills. you know?
Right. For sure. First of all, thank you so much for sharing that. That whole first half of the show has been extremely enlightening, and I look forward to great things from TCI Finance. I'm looking forward to it. And any way that we can help you, me or my audience, we will be here for you guys. And now this is the second half of the show where you push your piece. You're on Pushing
Let's
Your Pace
go.
podcast, and you wouldn't be a guest on my show if you didn't get your chance to push your piece. So, Vanessa, tell us, which P or P's has been transformational for your journey?
I can name as much as I like.
Of course, if sure.
Firstly, I must say prayer, purpose,
Mhm.
positivity, promise, and power. I'm going to take
All
power
right.
from your book.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Now, there's so many of those pieces, but I let's talk about one that I've never heard any of my guests say, and you're the first one to say it. So I want you to elaborate on the specific one that you just said. Promise, the P promise.
Okay.
What is promise, and why is that important to your life?
Promise to me is reminding myself of that internal commitment I've made. I have taken on this role to make my home country a better place. And I promise myself that I will keep at it no matter what. I will not give up no matter what. I will focus on the end goal rather than the process. Because if I focus on the process, I'm human. I'm going to go through the motions. I'm going to go through, the pains and the sorrows. But remembering that, Vanessa, you promised yourself that you will put the future first. Because at the end of the day, when I'm old and gray, I just want to know that the part that I played here, I was an honorable woman, and I kept my promise to not only myself, but to the future of my country, which is the next generation. I don't look at myself as living life for me, but I look at it for living for the person that's coming after me. So I try to remain faithful. I try to remain focused. Sometimes, you do get fearful, but I try to stay encouraged. Because at the end of the day, the promise has already been made. The promise has already been made from the moment I took on the role. The promise is made.
I'm so happy that you're walking in your. Usually we say we're walking in your purpose, but I think
Yes.
the context that's fitting for you right now is you're walking in your promise to
Yes.
yourself, right?
Yes.
And Vanessa, continue on your journey. I think this has been a very powerful episode. We heard about, first of all, the concept of prosperity, and then it trickled down to some of the mistakes we made, and then of course you got me ranting about the banks. I think that's fear because a lot of us feel that way.
That's okay. That's fair.
Right?
That's fair.
But I think this conversation has been very enlightening, and I want to thank you so much for coming on. Now, before you leave, there's two more things that I want to ask you, and the first one is, of course, you've read my book, Happy
Yes.
the Piece to Push to a Happier Life. So tell me and tell the audience what was that like, and what was your main takeaway from the book?
Oh, I mean, the book was like, for me, it was like therapy. It was just a moment for me to really reflect on not only my upbringing, but the way that I live life in general, and see how I can incorporate the different P's into how I move going forward. And what was the second part?
Oh, just I think you've done it. Just tell the audience your
Oh,
experience. Yeah. I think you've done
I,
it.
I want to do the experience separate. That experience and reading the book and journaling, you know, I found it really therapeutic, but also necessary. Because in order for us to kind of move forward in life, if we don't unpack the things or the weights that we have holding on to us, release ourselves from these weights, we're going to keep walking at a slower pace. If we want to increase our pace. We have to be in a position to let things go, grow from them, and be more positive about the way we look at life because things will happen. We're living in this world where things are happening daily.
Indeed.
And you have to train your mindset. You have to train your mind so you can know how to respond to it and not fall into the crowd of being lost or dwelling somewhere for too long because all of those are just stumbling blocks. You're stagnant. You're not going anywhere. So in reading that book and every single chapter I've read, I'm just like, this is so serious. Things that you don't think about, it comes right into your mind as you reflect. And it's like I've been holding on to this for so long. And when
Right.
you write it out, you're like, this wasn't even anything to hold on to. So I really like that it helped me to put things into perspective. And because I like writing, I just wrote it out. And once I wrote it out, it was gone. It was gone out my
Ab-
mind. So to the viewers,
Absolutely.
get the book.
Boom. V, thank you so much. And you wouldn't be a guest on my show now if I didn't ask you a spin-off question. So are you ready for your spin-off question?
Ready for anything? Let's go.
Awesome. So the spin-off question and the final question of this episode will be, what gift would you give to your enemy?
Forgiveness. Or is it a material gift?
That's a gift. Why?
Oh, yes.
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Because, like I told you, Christian values is me. Well, not all the way, but as far as I can move in life, when you see that you have an enemy, you're basically hurting the both of you because you're putting this person in position to be hate in your heart. And most times, you don't know why they did what they did. They may have been having a bad day. You just don't know someone's history, someone's mourning, someone's life. And if you hold that in your heart, you're kind of digging them into a hole of unforgiveness where they don't know that they did you wrong. And you know that they do you wrong. And the Bible speaks about you having certain knowledge and working in that knowledge, rather than working against it. So because I know if I have an enemy, I'm hurting them just as much as I'm hurting me because, God is love. We're supposed to love one another. I would always put forgiveness first in my heart. It's not easy. I'm going to say that. It's not easy. It's a process, but the benefits of it is knowing that when you see that you forgive someone, there's no weight on you. There's no weight on them.
Vanessa Hall, thank you so much for being a guest on Pushing
Thank
Your
you for
Peace
having
podcast
me.
and dropping so many gems. Any final words before we close out?
Thank you for having me. And, I'm looking forward to working with Pushing Your Peace, definitely for the next generation, because I believe in order for us all in TCI to work together, we have to want to collaborate for the future. We have to not think about ourselves, but think about where we want our country to be.
Indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, Vanessa Hall, Executive Assistant to the CEO of TCI Finance. It has been a pleasure, and I'll see you next week on Pushing Your Peace podcast.